Last week on V1 Rotate, I flew from Austin to Tampa with Flying Magazine's own Dick Karl and his Cessna Citation CJ1. Dick is a super interesting guy, and we talked about Dick's writing for flying, his first career as a cancer surgeon, and the steady progression of airplanes Dick owned over his years in medicine.
I submitted an article to Flying Magazine. Well, Mac McClellan was the editor. Mac said, "No, man, your job is to be the rich, obnoxious jerk." He said, "You're going to send him something once a month till he gives up." And I did. I always wanted your job, in a sense, but I had this other love, and the pay was good. And I really loved being a surgeon. I mean, it was exciting, interesting, compelling, never trivial. At age 68, I decided I wanted to be a full-time professional pilot. Why in the world would you want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning for 8 days in a row and make $29,000 a year as an FO for us? I could have known a lot of really cute girls and smoked a lot of reefer, but I was at the airport and I missed it.
After landing in Tampa, Dick and I headed to his beautiful waterfront home to sit on his dock, drink martinis, and talk about what it was like to retire from medicine and begin a career as a professional pilot at the age of 68, flying Citation jets under Part 135 for JetSuite. Join us for Part 2 of this special episode of V1 Rotate, flying and talking late life career changes with Dick Karl. So, here we are, 2 hours and 20 minutes later. Before we got busy on the descent there, we were starting to talk about how you had a lot of friends that were pro pilots, and you'd had it kind of in the back of your mind for a long time.
I'd always admired airline people, and I admired what they did. I got this group of friends, and I met some people when I got a 737 type rating, and they became friends. By the way, whenever you get a type rating, you usually end up with a good friend. You know, I was an airline wannabe guy, and I had doctor friends and lawyer friends and newspaper friends and pilot friends, and we have this little group, as you know. I think you've been to one of our dinners.
Yeah.
In order to be in this group, you had to look good on paper, but be kind of a mess in real life. And many of them were airline guys. And
that tracks.
The thing about, I think probably trial law, surgery, and flying is its performance. You have to perform. You get up in front of a jury, or you pick up a knife, or you push the throttles forward. You got to have an idea of what you're doing and where you're going.
So, having wanted to do this for a long time, how did that work with the decision to retire from medicine?
Yeah, as I've mentioned before, and it's pretty well known that, you know, I had a prostate cancer, and if I was going to contemplate my mortality, this was a good time to do the things on your list that you hadn't done yet.
Yeah.
I think they make movies about that stuff. I have had a number of people come up to me and say, you know, I was an electrical engineer. If you could do it, I could do it. And sure enough, I'm flying for Endeavor, or I just got hired by American, or I've had people say that to me recently.
I fly with a fair number that had established careers and then decided either that they weren't satisfied with what they were doing, or they just had such an interest in aviation that they'd always wonder what if.
Well, the latter avenue is much more likely to provide pleasure than the former, because running away from something is way different than running towards something.
So, having had the thought in the back of your mind that this is something you were going to do, you made the decision to retire from medicine. How did you get that first job after that? Because you weren't a typical job applicant.
Well, that's true. I'm going to back that story up a little bit. It was the chief pilot for Southwest in Chicago who said, "I just read you wanted to buy a new airplane. You've never seen a new airplane. We're getting 38 new airplanes this year. How would you like to go on a delivery flight?" So I got to know a bunch of them, and I became good friends with Rob Haynes. And I had other friends that I was flying a Lear with who were getting hired by 135 operations, and one of them said, "I'll take your resume in and you'll get a call." So I got recommended. I was at a Sun and Fun fly-in in Lakeland, Florida on a Wednesday afternoon, and I got a call from the chief pilot at JetSuite. And he said, "Look, I've got 16 interview slots next week to hire a couple of pilots, and I really can't waste an interview. And you know, if you're not really serious, or you know, if you're just a doctor with a dream, it's not going to be good use of that slot." And I'm thinking, how can I possibly establish a relationship with this man on the phone? I mean, he doesn't know me. He's got no idea about how interested I am. I have had applications at other places rejected because they concluded that nobody who was living the life I was living would ever be interested in doing what they were doing.
Not in the right mind anyways.
They just couldn't believe that you'd want to give it all up and go fly 135. This is beyond their comprehension. So I've got him on the phone trying to make a connection with Paul Prophet, and I ask him about him. Well, tell me about your story. He said, well, I flew the Bush, then I was a controller, then I flew for Air South, and then I flew for Southwest. I left Southwest, it was one of the first classes at JetBlue. And I said, you left Southwest? How'd they take that? He said, well, people in Dallas were mad, but my chief pilot and assistant chief pilot were great people, and they supported it. Who was that? That was Rob Haynes. Well, I'm standing right next to Rob Haynes. Can I put him on the phone? And Rob got on the phone, got me the interview.
Amazing.
That's how that happened.
Yeah. Can you tell me basically what was your job? What was a typical day or a typical trip like at JetSuite?
So the average day could be quite long, and you know, we would always be within rest limits as prescribed by Part 135. And even if we were and we were tired, all you had to say on the phone was fatigue. That's right. All you had to say, and 10 minutes later your phone rang and there was a hotel.
That's indicative of a good safety culture.
That was an amazing culture. They were really, it was all JetBlue people, and they had in their bones how to operate a really successful operation. It was really a put together group.
Over the course of a trip, were they majority working legs, or did you have a lot of empty legs in there?
No, I just saw some statistics from NetJets, and they do about 300,000 legs a year, and 170 of them are occupied. So the answer is, that is a big issue with private aircraft that are used to fly either owners or Part 135. You spend a lot of time repositioning empty, which is great for a new FO who gets to fly the airplane.
Right.
But it's not good for the finances.
So you didn't have a flight attendant.
Right.
So was that usually the first officer kind of acted as flight attendant?
No, you know, we would outline what was on board for them to use, and then we'd get them set up before we left, took off. You know, you want Coke or whatever, we give them that, get them the ice, get that started. As the FO, you're responsible for keeping the aircraft clean, so you're always like, let's not fill that all the way up with Coke, you know. West Coast trips way different than East Coast trips.
Oh, interesting. How so?
East Coast people are hedge fund, VC, probably 15 to 20 years older than the West Coast folks. West Coast folks are celebrities in the entertainment industry or .com, frequently quite wealthy, very young, and would show up with 2 bottles of champagne and one in each arm.
Yeah, they were there to party.
You rarely saw that out of Boston.
Yeah, okay. For me, you know, Part 121, you show up, here's the paperwork, you load it, you go fly, and there's really very few extraneous duties. Did you guys have a dispatch office, or were you doing
we
most
had
of your...
a dispatch office, and they were terrific. We did all our own flight planning. They would have looked at whether or not it was a feasible trip.
Okay.
And occasionally I'd call up and say, wait a minute, you know, 4 280-pounders have just showed up, and you've got us landing with 900 pounds of gas. I just think we need to make a stop. Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get a trip and you go, yeah, I don't know, the weather forecast is this. Call the chief pilot. Boom. Chief pilot always, especially this fellow Paul, always there, always answered. His answers were so clear and so to the SOPs and the regulations that you just went, okay.
So thinking back to that first year at JetSuite, reading a lot of your columns from that time and talking to you, exchanging texts, I really enjoyed that it was, you know, here's a guy who for years has thought about doing this, maybe dreamed about doing this, and suddenly now you're doing it. And it seemed like there were just moments where you're like, oh, aha, this is what it means to be a pro pilot.
You know, I fly a CJ-1 now, which I could never have done if I hadn't flown for JetSuite. I know some people do it, but I couldn't have.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have known what the machine and the man can do.
Right.
And they taught it to me. The other was that I was used to working 12 to 14 hours a day, but I always got home every night.
Right.
I got up at 5:45 in the morning for 40 some odd years, but I wasn't ever asked to report to work at 7 p.m. at night.
Right.
And I had a couple rotations where I set the brakes at 4 a.m. and 2 days later I got up at 3 a.m. Yeah, it was all legal.
Yep.
But you go like, okay, this you can see wear and tear. You can see why people tire.
Yes. That can be tough on people in their 30s, in their 20s.
Absolutely. Tough on relationships. Fortunately, I had a great wife who was very supportive. And at first, our weeks were short enough that, I got home every 5 days or something.
Yeah.
And it was like a great reunion. It was like, there's no sense complaining about anything because everything was great. You're happy to be home. And the captains that I worked with, almost to a person, were incredibly A, gifted, B, generous, so that they were just fabulous. Also good friends till today. I mean, it's just an amazing experience. I had one captain who was a very attractive blonde woman who was really smart, really nice, had an advanced degree in English literature. And we're going into Santo Domingo, and we get to this fancy hotel, and the lobby's on the 8th floor. We go up there, and the guy behind the desk is slick, and he looks at me and he goes, "So, Captain, one room?" And I said, "I really am sorry to tell you this, but she's the captain and 2 rooms." And he looked at me like I was the biggest loser on the planet. So there was little experiences like that, that were so much fun. And we flew from Austin, Texas to Tampa today. I've been flying for 56 years. I still find that magic. So to be in these airplanes that were way more capable than anything I'd ever flown, flying with people who were highly experienced, that first year was just like one ice cream sundae after the next. It really was. For a guy who went off to work every day and put on a pair of pajamas and worked in a 20 by 20 square room with a bunch of lights, this was pretty exciting.
Yeah, you did it for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
What was the decision process behind your second retirement?
Well, I'd been a captain for a year, and gosh, it was almost more fun being the FO.
That's funny.
You didn't have responsibility. Yeah. It was like, okay, here we go. This will be fun. You got to fly every other day, no matter what.
Yeah.
And so it was like, wow, this is great. The people were great, and now it's your responsibility. Oh, okay. That made it a little bit more. All right, I better pay a little more attention here. It was a little bit more like the responsibility of being a surgeon.
Yeah.
And you got to do just as much actual flying as the FO.
Yeah.
And since, it sounds obnoxious to say it, but the fact was that the salary difference didn't make any difference to me.
Yeah. Yep.
And so when I upgraded to captain, I called a friend of mine who's a big shot surgeon in LA and said I was going to make 90. He said, a month?
Nope.
So I heard an interesting story about that concept the other day, which was Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller, the guy who wrote Catch-22, are at a hedge fund guy's mansion in the Hamptons. And Vonnegut turns to Heller and says, this hedge fund guy makes more in a month than you made from writing Catch-22. And Joseph Heller says to him, I have something this man will never have. And Vonnegut says, well, what's that? He says, enough.
Yeah.
I have enough. Docs do get in a rut where the income is nice and you go to the hospital, they call you doctor, you get special parking space, all that stuff. So, you end up with people that become addicted to it. Now, a lot of people don't have any other interest, They play a little golf on the weekend or take some photographs or whatever, and that's different.
But this has been an all-encompassing thing for you for
to have
so
two
long.
great professions?
So long.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Come on. It's like, enough. I have enough.
That's great. Before you flew the CJs professionally, the most complex airplane, the most high-performance airplane you had flown was your Piper Cheyenne. Since getting to fly these airplanes professionally for 3 years, that's enabled you to then move into jet ownership and piloting a jet yourself in your private life.
I don't think I would have been comfortable had I not flown 135. Flying with these people for 3 years, I learned a lot. I learned, I hope, how to be professional. and to make good aeronautical decisions. So that led me to think I could buy a jet. So I retired from JetSuite. I thought, well, let's have a Premier. Whew. Premier is a Beechcraft built in the early 2000s. That's MMO was 0.80. Let me say that again, 0.80. Unfortunately, that airplane was broken a lot. It had an inherent flaw that never got fixed despite lots of money. That had to do with the way the spoilers worked. And I got a caution light every flight.
Oh, wow.
And ultimately, we had a bird strike, which on a Citation would have been repaired, but on the Premier there weren't any parts.
Simply because it was orphaned.
And
yeah.
It was the whole airplane was written off. To be involved in the loss of a hull, oh my God, I felt terrible.
I mean, through no fault of your own.
I know, but still,
just a Pelican in the wrong place
I'd go out and
time.
look at it, and they chopped it up.
Oh God.
Yeah.
How long after that write-off did you buy your Citation, your CJ1?
Oh, let's see, that probably about 4 months. It took a while to find one.
Yeah.
And I looked at a couple and then put a bid on this one and got it and fixed it up a little bit. And then ultimately with the ADSB mandate put in 2 Avidyne 550s, which are amazing boxes. Got all this capability that you saw today.
Yeah. How have you used this airplane? What's the majority of your usage been?
Well, you know, we go to New Hampshire to see family a lot. We go to Delaware to see family a lot. And then, you know, I've got some other gigs that I do, one of which is flying this airplane out of Hilton Head, and the co-captain or the captain and I will fly to Hilton Head in my airplane and then fly a trip. It's economically doesn't make any sense. But
to say that's an expensive commute.
Yeah, it is, but it sure is fun, you know.
So. I know that insurance has gotten way tougher the last few years, and especially with aging pilots, there's been kind of a clampdown in the industry. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I sure have. In fact, we're currently not insured as of tomorrow for single pilot operations. I hope that we can get single pilot operations back, but we may not. And if we don't, we'll probably have to sell this airplane. Okay. And the irony is I will then try to insure like a Cessna 340 or a Baron, which is way more complex to fly, has way less capability of dealing with ice and thunderstorms.
That's the big thing.
But it's a little bit like saying, you know, you should insure every 32-year-old. Well, some 32-year-olds I wouldn't insure at all. Yeah. And I you know, to just be part of a blanket dismissal because of age. Now, you know, has anybody had a luckier life than me? Not that I know of. White, born in the U.S., parents valued education, great jobs, made good money. I mean, I never had a scintilla of prejudice against me, ever. Yeah. Until this age issue. Yep. And that really is boo-hoo for a guy who's my age. So what? You know, you've had your candy. Give me a break. And I'm going to try to keep this airplane, but I may not. And I may have to write about, you know, the readers of this magazine have seen me go from a guy with a P210 to a 340, to a Cheyenne, to flying for JetSuite, to getting a Premier, to having a CJ1, and now they may have to watch me go back down the other side of the hill. But it is an experience every pilot will have. Yes. Even if you're 18 right now. Yep. Yeah. Just get out the calendar. You can check it out. Somebody someday is going to tell you you're too old.
Well, Dick, it's been such a pleasure talking with you today and flying with you. Really appreciate it. Whatever is next for you, I think you're going to find the right airplane.
Back in a year or two, we'll go flying.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, man. It's been great.
Likewise. Thanks for watching V1 Rotate, and for more great content for new and aspiring professional pilots, join me here at flyingmag.com every first and third Friday of the month.